You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 166 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. For this week's episode, I actually found the recording of the first step that I was hoping to play on last week's episode. So this will feature Mads from Denmark giving his first step at the noon Zoom meeting. Normally, when I record first steps at that meeting, I am at work, and so I usually have a recording on my work computer, or I upload it to Dropbox to be able to transfer over to my computer. And last week, I could not find the file in either place to start working on it. Upon posting last week's episode, I remembered that first step was done on the weekend when I was at home, and so I recorded that actually on my home computer, and going to my Zoom files on my home computer, found the recording. So I was in a moment of panic and thought that I was going to have to reach out to Mads to re-record his first step. But gratefully, I was able to find the recording and share it on this week's episode. So over the past few months, Mads has been sending in emails to the podcast, and I've read a few of them, one of them talking about a song suggestion and also wanting to do an episode on kink. And this does come into Mads's first step. I particularly for this episode wanted to read part of an email that he sent in March when we were trying to figure out how to record his first step, whether or not it would be a one-off podcast recording or at the noon Zoom room. But he writes, I will most definitely touch upon kink, BDSM, cross-dressing, and how those things can be healthy, but obsessive and damaging at the same time. I've done stuff that is clearly insane, but in its core is just part of my sexuality that I cannot and will not ignore. So I'll leave the latter half of that to Mads's first step, but I did want to talk about a few things here at the beginning. For those who don't know what BDSM is, and I'm sure most of you do, but just on the off chance, BDSM, bondage and discipline, sadomasochism, but also there is dominance and submission. BDSM is now a catch-all phrase for those types of behaviors. I did want to read this from the Wikipedia page on BDSM. Activities and relationships in BDSM are typically characterized by the participants taking on roles that are complementary and involved in inequality of power. Thus, the idea of informed consent of both partners is essential. The terms submissive and dominant are usually used to distinguish these roles. The dominant partner takes the psychological control over the submissive. And so we will be talking about BDSM in this episode and the kink community. A lot of people that do come to the program have had issues with acting out with BDSM. So I want to be upfront that it is not for everyone. It could be clearly addictive behaviors for some people, while others can use BDSM in a healthy manner. And in SAA, we make no distinction on what is or isn't healthy for an individual. So I did pick out a few readings that touch on the subject. The first coming from the AA Big Book that was written back in the 1930s, and then a reading from the Green Book. And I think I've relayed this story. The group of guys that I've played music with at our retreats, we called ourselves Straight Pepper Diet, and that comes straight out of the Big Book from this reading. And this will be from the bottom of page 68 and the top of page 69. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there, but above all, we tried to be sensible in this question. So it's easy to get way off the track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes. Absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? And from there, I'm going to move over to the Green Book, talking about defining abstinence. And this will be mostly page 15, but starting at the bottom of 14 and the top of 16. The section defining abstinence. Most of us have no desire to stop being sexual altogether. It is not sex in and of itself that causes us problems, but the addiction to certain sexual behaviors. In SAA, we will all be better able to determine what behavior is addictive and what is healthy. However, the fellowship does not dictate to its members what is and isn't addictive sexual behavior. Instead, we have found that it is necessary for each member to define his or her own abstinence. We are individuals, and our addictive behaviors, while similar, are unique to each of us. What may be healthy for one member could clearly be addictive for another. SAA simply cannot predict every possible way of acting out and define them all for everyone. As a fellowship, we wouldn't want to deny that any particular behavior might be acting out for a member, nor would we want to restrict behaviors that are healthy for some of us. Since different addicts suffer from different behaviors, and since our sexuality is experienced in so many different ways, it is necessary that SAA members define for themselves, with the help of their sponsors or others in recovery, which of their sexual behaviors they consider to be acting out. This can be a difficult challenge. If we are too lenient with ourselves, we may not get sober. If we are too strict, we may restrict ourselves from healthy behaviors that we have no need to give up, and an inability to meet our high standards could set us up for relapse. We need the help of other recovering sex addicts and the reliance on a power greater than ourselves to find the right balance between these two extremes. We carefully consider which sexual behaviors we feel powerless to stop, and which sexual acts lead to feelings of demoralization or negative consequences. These are the addictive behaviors from which we seek to abstain. We also consider which sexual behaviors are acceptable to us, or even experienced with a sense of gratitude and enjoyment. Our program acknowledges each individual's dignity and a right to choose his or her own concept of healthy sexuality. We have learned that our ideas of what is healthy and what is addictive evolve with experience. In time, we are able to define our individual abstinence with honesty, fairness, and gentleness. This process is a valuable exercise in our recovery. It requires us to carefully examine all of our sexual behaviors, decide which ones are healthy or addictive, and note those cases where we are not sure. It is a way of taking stock of our sexuality that teaches us a lot about ourselves and our behavior. And I'm going to stop there. So this is all the preface of going into the 3 circles. And we've talked about the circles many times on the podcast, beginning on episode 4. And so all of this to say that when talking about things that are clearly addictive for a lot of people, such as BDSM, kink, and polyamory, they may not be addictive for other members. So we will hear that in Mass's story, as well as what is clearly addictive and demoralizing. Something that won't show up here on the audio, but Mass did deliver his first step while cross-dressing. So he did have on a wig and a dress, and I believe some makeup. Our noon Zoom room is a men's and non-binary room, so gender non-conforming. Loved the ability for Mass to express himself as he needed and to feel comfortable in that. And so now, without further ado, here is Mass delivering his first step that we recorded back in May of 2025, and finally here on the podcast. I hope you enjoy it.
Mads, you are about to share with us your first step. We acknowledge and affirm your courage in taking this step. We want to clarify some things about this experience for each of us. The primary purpose, and given in this formal first step presentation, is to aid you in your program of recovery. It is not done to please the group or to gain status. There's no right or wrong way to give a first step. Any effort you make is legitimate. Here are some suggestions which others have gone before you have found helpful. We encourage you to be specific about your behaviors and to speak from your heart in order to be in touch with the pain and the reality of your addiction. Try not to bury yourself in shame. Let us hear you, not your addict speaking. The group is responsible to be loving, caring, and accepting of you. The members will avoid judging you, giving advice to you, or taking care of you. If you wish, you may request that one interrupt you during your presentation. However, several members have affirmed that on reflection, such interruptions have helped to guide them to make the first step experience more meaningful. Mads has requested no interruptions. If you wish, we will let you know when 5 minutes of the meeting time remain. This will allow you a few minutes to complete your presentation and also allow time for members to give feedback about what it is you said if you feel stuck with you. Remember, we are here for you. May God grant you serenity.
Hey guys, my name is Mads. I'm a sex, porn, and fantasy addict. And here's my first step, and I really hope that the sound is going through. I grew up as an only child. My father was a physician, and my mother a physiotherapist. Each had their own private practice, and particularly my dad worked a lot. My mom gave me lots of attention, and so did my dad whenever he could. I had a relatively protected childhood in a small town. Home life was mostly happy and content, but my mom could get very angry at times, and it scared me. Also, as an only child, I didn't have to share things. So my mother also tried to be an older sister and put me in my place to avoid me being self-centered and not knowing how to share. It didn't work out, but it gave me a weird but also close relationship with her. She was always attentive and often nurturing, but in hindsight, she was also overly close sometimes. My dad was relegated to be more distant, but I know now that was because he didn't get the chance. When I went to school, I was bullied a lot, and I got very angry and expressed that anger freely, but to no avail against my bullies. I got the advice from a teacher that if I didn't show emotions, I would become, air quotes, boring victim, and thus I stopped expressing negative and boundary-setting emotions. Instead, I just walled myself off. I was always a bookworm and loved to read stories. That meant I read a lot. My mom and dad loved each other, but they also had frequent and loud arguments. I just went to my room to play with my Legos or read. I was also held to a high standard in school, but I really liked learning and reading. I often felt rejected by girls as soon as that started being an interest. My first recollection of something sexual was watching the 90s cartoon Darkwing Duck, where the main character was strapped to a steel table and hoisted into the air to get electrocuted by lightning. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but today I know. I also watched the film The Right Stuff because space and flying was a huge interest to me. However, the scenes with the medical testing really got to me, especially the electrocution of a hand, getting it to involuntarily contract, and the part with the barium X-ray scan and the astronauts being led upstairs to get rid of all the liquid in their bowels also stirred things in me. By the time I was around 11 to 12, I found some mail order catalogs with underwear models and some, quote, massage equipment in the back. I sneaked those into my room and got really aroused. This continued for quite a while. For some reason, I had also found diapers and the loss of control of my bodily functions to be extremely arousing. At one point, my grandma was admitted to hospital and we visited her. At one time, while in the bathroom there, I saw adult-sized diapers and put one on under my clothes. Afterwards, we went to a department store and I wet myself in the diaper a little bit there. The rush of excitement and arousal was immense. When we got home to my grandma's house, I went to the bathroom and rubbed the diaper until I came. That was my very first orgasm. I was 12 at the time. Around this time, I also found one or two of my dad's porn magazines. I got into masturbation regularly. I also continued to look through the catalogs of lingerie a lot. Then I also found my dad's VHS porn tapes and sneaked to watch them at home after school because my parents were working. I always had time in the afternoon alone, and my watching porn became an almost daily occurrence. I also got increasingly interested in panties, not just to see them on women, but also to wear them myself. At one point, coming home from school, I found a bag full of girls' panties and brought them home. I wore not just one pair, but all of them on top of each other, and I wet them on purpose. I then hid them in a tightly closed plastic bag in the bottom of my closet. At this time, I also started to find the thought of tasting my own pee arousing. So I tried that, but it was too acrid. However, I had also discovered BDSM-like things and tried to use the panties I found as gags and put them in my mouth. The dirty, discarded panties that I'd wet myself and hidden for weeks were in my mouth. It was really nasty, but also exciting. However, I wound up quite sick with stomach problems, diarrhea, and a high fever. You might think that made me stop, but no. I did the same thing several times over a few months. It got me sick, but I also avoided school and bullying and pressures to perform. And it first and foremost got me entire days alone in the house with time to act out, which I did even though I was sick. At the age of approximately 13, I got my first computer for playing games and doing schoolwork. It was a huge thing, and back in the year 2000. So child safety against porn and other inappropriate material was definitely not a thing. So what did I do? I immediately found porn websites with images of bound women and men, BDSM images, stories, and short videos. The internet speed was so slow that I didn't really find any full-length videos, but my love and interest in kink and BDSM was solidified. I also found that what aroused me the most was to see men being subjected to all sorts of tortures of a sexual kind by women, also to wear panties and women's clothing. This immediately became my favorite. At the same time, I also finally got a date with a real girl. We went to the cinema and we even kissed on the lips on the way home. She wasn't the most attractive, and after this one date, she didn't want anything to do with me anymore. I didn't understand until I found out that the whole thing was a setup to ridicule and humiliate me. This gave me a big scar emotionally, and since then I always thought women who showed an interest in me had ulterior motives. At age 13 or 14, we went on a skiing holiday with my uncle, aunt, and two cousins. And my oldest cousin and I touched each other in an inappropriate way. We were just two young teens exploring each other's bodies, but she and I were definitely out of our depth. From then on, I just delved deeper and deeper, using porn almost every day. I also explored many things, from tasting my own pee, to finding clothes I could wear, to finding out in which way I could torture myself with things. Around this time, I also went to sporting school for a year, and that put a brake on many of these things, but I did get caught by some fellow students who saw me through the window of my room. When they asked how you could masturbate while reading, I countered with that it was the book called The Story of O, and when they tried to find it in the local library, they were denied because it was quote unquote adult. A year later, I went to Brazil as an exchange student, and in Brazil, my objectification of women got to a whole new level, both because it's so prevalent and normal in that culture, but also because I was all of a sudden the European guy, and I was immediately very interesting to women. I went from being the decidedly nerdy guy who was socially a downgrade for any girl to being the nerdy but interesting guy from abroad. Needless to say, my addiction loved Brazil. This is also where I noticed that my dad probably also is a sex addict, because he commented on a photo I sent home that with these kind of women around, he became afraid I'd never come home. I was now 17, 18 years old, and I lost my virginity in a one-night stand towards the end of my year there. Albeit being the interesting guy, my awkward social skills meant that I didn't really get close to any women while being there except being friends. When I came home, I went through high school and went to the Royal Lifeguard and served for 8 months to protect the royal family. At this time again, my addiction wasn't as prevalent, except that I visited a professional dom because in Copenhagen it was more easily accessible. All of that changed when I moved to Aalborg to study. This was my first time living alone, and I got very much into using porn every night for long stretches of time. I also started to visit adult bookstores to buy toys and things to try out. Even with my limited money, I bought quite a few things. I also enjoyed wearing panties sometimes. At some point, I was at a party in Copenhagen and I got really drunk and went to a strip club and lost a lot of money. I was so ashamed afterward. I felt like my world had been destroyed and I could barely show up for classes and schoolwork. I also told my parents and they were sort of understanding. It didn't make me stop using porn and masturbation a lot. I also felt incredibly lonely and I was not really feeling like a part of a group of friends. I also longed for a real relationship and real sex. For most of my student time, I simply just masturbated to porn daily. Masturbation, however, was not just with my penis, but also other erogenous zones and orifices of my body. I also used different ways to create painful or uncomfortable sensations to go along with my need to feel dominated, subverted, degraded, and humiliated. My fantasies and the type of porn I used was often dark, taboo, and twisted. I didn't get to the point where it was decidedly illegal, but I truly can't say for sure. At a later stage, I repeated the mistake of going to a strip club drunk after being out with friends. This time it went much worse. My card got declined and taken by the ATM of my bank, and I don't even know how I got home. The day after, a very angry taxi driver showed up wanting payment to give me back my phone. This time I had lost a lot more money, much more than I had in my bank account. In desperation, I reported my card stolen and the code having been spied on. So I filed a fake police report and incident report with my bank to get the money back. It worked, but in essence, I committed false testimony and fraud by lying. At this same time, I was also talking to this woman from Brazil that I haphazardly run into on Orkut, a precursor to today's social media. Eventually, I decided that she was the one and moved to Brazil to finish my master thesis there. I divulged my proclivities to BDSM and domination, but it didn't in any way come clean about the full extent of it. She was curious, but also apprehensive. After I turned in my master thesis, we went back to Denmark and settled in a small town where I got my first real job. Life seemed good, but there was always this undercurrent of my acting out with porn and sex with myself. I almost relished the idea of her working evenings in the weekend so I could act out and clean up after myself before she got home. We got married, and a year later she got pregnant. We bought a house and everything seemed to be fine. However, halfway into her pregnancy, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and just before my son was born, we found out it was inoperable and terminal. When my son was born, he was also very, very sick. Within the first 3 weeks of his life, he underwent 3 major abdominal surgeries, and nothing could be done about his condition. He needed 100% of his nutrients to be administered by a central IV catheter. During that time, my family rallied around and helped where they could, and my wife and I literally lived at the hospital. Acting out here seemed impossible, but once in a while I had to drive 2 hours home to pick up clothes and stuff we needed. When I got home, I always relaxed, air quotes, a bit too, i.e. acting out with porn, especially now that my emotional needs for distraction and self-soothing were at an all-time high. After my son was released from hospital and removed home, my addiction went into a little bit of a hibernation while I was juggling my son and my terminally ill mom. However, after my mom died and my son was still very, very ill, my addiction kicked back in. At this point, it started to take a toll on my marriage, and I even tried to abstain for a few months, only to fall into complete anorexia and depression. Then my wife decided she would like to see other men, and my addict jumped at the idea as the perfect excuse to also act out guilt-free. This was the beginning of the end of our marriage. I fell deep into addiction, not just with porn, but after a while, also with other partners, as my wife condoned that I could try to find someone to practice BDSM with. I found mostly men and finally conceded to being bisexual. Then COVID hit and my addiction was curtailed once more. And finally, my marriage came to an end in 2021 when I moved out of the house. Once I had moved out, I started on a spree. Daily porn news almost throughout the day, gay and straight hookups and dating apps, anonymous meetings with strange men, and quote unquote, a license to do it all because I was accountable to no one. It also meant some good things and meeting some good people. I also met my current wife in all this mess, and while she was very accepting of me, my kinks, cross-dressing, and desires and sexuality, she also clearly stated she was highly monogamous. This and many other things brought on many a fight with me, completely oblivious to how to do relationships right. I was burned by my ex-wife and tried to hold my ground on even the most unreasonable concepts regarding female acquaintances and friends and online content, let alone porn use. However, my wife really was in love with me and I with her, so we continually patched things up. My acting out alone with porn decreased a lot, but we didn't live together and I found many occasions to act out anyway. My wife always suspected something. I got increasingly anxious and scared about what I'd do and tried to get a lot of reassurances. And I swore many a times that I was just watching this or that film or TV series or whatnot. All of this came to a head when I went to Belgium to present a scientific article in the fall of 23. And we had a big blowout, an argument, and I went out on the town in Brussels and went to a gay club and sucked a guy. After that, I didn't tell her immediately, and I just tried to bury it as I had done with so many other things. I proposed, we got engaged, and we moved in together, and the arguments continued to be frequent and loud, and I didn't really feel like I could be myself anymore. And this was already before D-Day. Then D-Day happened, and actually that was a relief because finally I felt like I could be at least more honest and also stay abstinent from porn and masturbation alone. And I did so for 10 months until I just simply felt so trapped by what my addiction had created in her as well, in terms of betrayal trauma and really feeling triggered with me just walking down the street. And it was so hard. So in the end, I had not one, but 2 suicide attempts. And I acted out after the suicide attempts. So I'd rather commit suicide than act out. But in the end, the toll was too much. And my wife and I, we have just recently decided to split. And that means that I'm, you could say, back in active addiction, or I have to readjust my circles to fit my new reality, because I also discovered that I am not just bisexual and a gender non-conforming man, I'm also non-monogamous. And I don't believe I can ever just be with one person in a monogamous relationship. And yeah, that is the end of my first step story. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mads, for your courageous first step presentation. The meeting is now open for discussion. At this time, we will take responses, affirmations, and reactions to the first step. We'll start the shares beginning with Mads' sponsor, Bill.
And Bill, I'm a sex addict. Mads, thank you so much for the story. There's a lot there to relate to for many of us. You know, I've battled with a lot of the same things you have. I don't want to go into it too much and get explicit, but, I have fought battles with my own sexuality and, wondered sometimes where I was at. And that's a tough place to be. But I mean, not that being an addict period isn't a tough place to be, but yeah, I feel a lot of your pain and, rejoice in the good times. And yeah, just a great story. As many of you know, I'm always down for a good first step story or an experience, strength, and hope. And this was just absolutely fantastic. So keep it up. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Bill. All right. If you would like to affirm Mads in his first step, please use the Zoom raise hand feature. It can be found by selecting the reactions button. Please be mindful and keep your shares to 1 minute. Can I get a timer to time for 1 minute, please?
I can time that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. 1 minute, and we'll get started here with LJ.
Thank you, Matt. Mads, thank you for that courageous first step. You really shined the light on some of the deepest, darkest areas of your life, and it just showed the unmanageability and powerlessness of your situation, and also your trials and tribulations as you've been going through finding yourself. And I related a lot to some parts, and just wanted to say that, my heart's with you, and just keep moving forward, and, just remember that you have to like you, and that's all that matters. You're a child of God, and God loves you, and I'm just grateful to be here, that I could be here today to hear it. So thank you for letting me share. I'll pass.
Thank you, LJ. All right, Chris K.
I think we lost his audio. Ezra has the next share.
Okay, I was trying to get one more in before. All right, Ezra, you're up.
Thank you. I'm Ezra. I'm a sex addict. And I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much, Mads, for the level of vulnerability and honesty. And I really wanted to say, I'm so proud of you for being so real. And honestly, I relate a lot to a lot of those kind of gender and identity struggles really playing into a lot of factors of addiction. And I think it is amazing that you are coming at this with such a level of self-awareness and being able to separate those things out and be really honest with yourself and with everybody, instead of it just being a thing where it's oh, this must just be a part of my addiction, because that is a thing that I have struggled with a lot in the past, and I have really suppressed that part of myself. So I frequently say I really miss in-person meetings because I love to give people hugs, and I just wish I could give you a big hug. And thank you so much. You made me tear up a lot. And yeah, I'll pass. Thank you.
Jason, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think that I would have the understanding of mute and unmute when doing the recording. I did start the recorder again, and we wanted to get 3 shares in, and usually it's the first 3 people that volunteer. People that volunteer after that, I don't know if I have their permission to use their voice for the recording. Anyway, Jason, the sex addict, and Mass, that was a beautiful first step. You and I have had some great conversations, and still, since I'm not on WhatsApp, we can still do Zoom calls or whatever and find other ways of talking. But yeah, I can safely use BDSM in my outer circle, and I believe that talking about BDSM and kink things can be inner circle and difficult to talk about, but it also can be done in a healthy manner. And I look forward to having conversations with you over the years and trying to find a healthy, safe path through that within this program. I do have friends in this program who are also polyamorous. So if I can help out in any way, I would gladly be of service. And I'm grateful for your first step. Thanks. Many thanks to Mats for being able to share his first step on the podcast. I know it's really difficult to deliver a first step in a meeting in front of other people, but to offer it to be recorded and distributed here on the podcast is another level of surrender, which is just amazing. So hats off to everyone who has allowed their first steps to be recorded and used for the podcast. Going back to Matt's email, he did talk about wanting to do an episode on kink, and I think this is a great introduction to it, but I would love to do a panel discussion. I do have a friend in the program who is part of the kink community and who is also polyamorous, and would love to have them on, but I would also like to have other people on for a healthy discussion on the subject. So if you are interested, please feel free to give me an email and I'll see what I can do in terms of organizing that. For the rest of this episode, I do have a few emails that I didn't read on the previous one and a few that came in this week. And I will also be sharing some music and, if I can find a way, some audio clips from a TV show that I just watched recently. This first one that I want to read is from someone who has been on the podcast before and says, "Hi, Jason. My recovery recently included psychedelic-assisted therapy with MDMA. Not sure if there's an interest, but I'd be happy to share on the podcast my experience and why it worked for me. It was crucial to help me make sense of and help me to resolve my childhood trauma. Anyway, just a thought. Glad to be back on the Noon Zoom room and to see you and a number of familiar faces. Thanks, Jay." And yes, I will get back to you, knowing that we've already gone over some of your core behaviors and recovery and SAA. Looking at some outside help would be really cool to talk about your experience with psychedelics. And I know we've covered the subject with another person in the program, but yeah, I'm interested in hearing that. And again, this is a part of recovery, not taking away anything from the work done in SAA. So yeah, I will get back to you and see if we can put something together. Awesome. This one came in last week and says, "Hey Jason, my name is O, and I stumbled upon your podcast about a month ago. I absolutely love it. There's so many good nuggets, experiences, and hope that you share. I wasn't sure if you had any documents in which I could use to help sponsees or guide myself. I've been sober for 1 year and I'm wanting to sponsor soon. I know part of my hurdle is just throwing myself out there. I just wanted to have resources and information to be able to provide so I'm not so lost. I've lost touch with my sponsor, so I do not have them as a resource anymore, unfortunately. Anything you can provide would be greatly appreciated. Thanks again." And yes, I will reach out to you. There are lots of different resources out there. The first thing that comes to mind is the literature page at saa-recovery.org/literature. There is a lot of information there. I usually start people off with the 3 circles and defining their sexual sobriety in SAA, and then using the first step guide to recovery. There are also a few pamphlets on Step 1 guide for sponsors, Step 2 guide for sponsors, and I know that the literature committee is working on a handbook for the steps, but that one is in process. But yes, I do also have a few other resources from people who sponsor in SAA, what they use. They've got kind of a guideline of different readings and assignments, so I can email those over to you, but I don't have public links for those to be able to share here on the podcast. But yeah, I'll see what I can do. This one also came in last week, right as I was editing episode 165, so I didn't get this one onto the recording. But this is someone who is actually going to be on an upcoming episode of the podcast, and just saw him recently at an in-person meeting. I'm still going to choose to abbreviate his name here until we get to that episode. Anyway, it says, "Jason, just did a throwback and listened to podcast episodes 2 and 3 and heard the importance of meetings and places where topics of recovery can be discussed openly and honestly. This is such a blessing of the fellowship. I hope that anyone who is apprehensive or ashamed about the thought of going to a meeting will take the step and see that they are welcome in our search for a solution to our common problem. You had also mentioned your experience with healthy meetings versus unhealthy meetings. When I was new in recovery, someone told me that I would see 2 types of people, those that had recovery going on and those that didn't. My sobriety may not be years worth, but I would not have gotten to this point were it not for the steps and SAA. I just wanted to say good job and glad to be in the program with you. Signed, D. And so D was on a discussion of the Tradition 11 motion, the 2024 conference, and this will be an ongoing thing over the next few years with the conference motions. And I believe I'm going to try to edit that as the next episode of the podcast, even though I do have a few others in queue. I think that this topic was very interesting and is going to generate some great conversations before the next conference. And we do want to have a few more meetings around the world of people sharing their thoughts and ideas on the subject. The conference steering committee is responsible for doing Let's Talk sessions, and there was a Let's Talk session on the same subject the day before we did the recording. And they do plan to do a few more. So if you're subscribed to ISO emails, they will be having that information come out over the next few months. I'm not sure what the next Let's Talk subject will be, but they do plan on returning to this subject. I did get another email looking for contact information from a past guest, and I'm not going to read that one here. And this one I'm going to try to read. When it came in, I had a lot of tears coming up, and see if I can get through it for the recording. Just a very touching and humbling email. And it says, "Hi, Jason. I've been listening to your podcast since January of 2025. I've listened to almost all the episodes and just finished episode 164 now. I would like to thank you for your service. Your podcast has helped me greatly in the early phase of my recovery. I'm very grateful for your service. I listen to your podcast every day since January 2025, and it gives me hope listening to all the stories being shared. Knowing I am not alone really helps me not to give up. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I've been wanting to write this email to you, but did not. But today I finally wrote it because I've heard the very sad news about the death of Ozzy Osbourne. I know that you're a fan of Black Sabbath. I learned about Black Sabbath via your podcast, and the song Changes is in my recovery playlist. I wanted to write and say how sorry I am to hear the sad news and wish you strength and hope. I can understand you must be really sad about his death. A little about myself. I am a sex addict and love addict, and I'm with SLAA in Singapore. Discovery Day was October 2024. I joined the SLAA meetings from February 2025 until now. Just got a sponsor in July and working on the steps now. Thanks again for your service and all the best for your hip surgery soon. Regards, S." Yes, thank you so much for that. And yeah, Ozzy's death hit really hard this week. My Facebook feed was just flooded with Ozzy all day for a couple of days. And I will get to that momentarily. I do want to share some music. But Black Sabbath was commonly known as the band that invented heavy metal, and all of the music that I've been listening to for 40 or 50 years is all due to the sound of Black Sabbath, and their inspiration, what they've led to, has just been amazing. So with the death of Ozzy Osbourne, it has hit a lot of us metalheads pretty darn hard this week. And not just that, and people outside of the metal community, Generation X, Ozzy was just a huge part of pop culture, and his influence is just astounding. And I did want to play some music about that, and I'll be sharing that shortly. And thank you so much for the message about my hip surgery. That was just very touching, just to know that I'm getting an email from someone I haven't met wishing me luck. I really appreciate that. I found out this week that I've said previously that my dad had his hip surgery a few weeks ago, and I found out that my mom is going in for hip surgery the day before me. So it's kind of a family thing going on. But yeah, very looking forward to it. Nervous, but eager to be proactive in leading to a healthier life. Anyway, thank you so much for your email, and I will be writing back to you shortly. So to close out this episode, I had quite a few music selections to play, as well as an audio clip from the TV show Resident Alien. So I did ask Mass if he had any song selections that he wanted to play on this episode, and he did mention for King and Country, Control, and that one he wrote in an email a while ago, and I did play that on episode 151. But one of the other songs that he mentioned was by Queen, and the song is Don't Stop Me Now. And so I wanted to play some of that here.
Don't stop me now. Don't stop me. 'Cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by like Lady Godiva. I'm gonna go, go, go. There's no stopping me. I'm burning through the sky, yeah. 200 degrees, that's why they call me Mr. Fahrenheit. I'm traveling at the speed of light. I wanna make a supersonic man out of you. Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball.
Such an awesome song, very positive, uplifting, and motivating. Awesome track. Like I had mentioned, Mass had been emailing me since January, and it was back then that I played for King and Country, and so really grateful to be sharing Queen here on this episode. And before moving on to Ozzy and Black Sabbath, as mentioned in the email, I did want to mention another musician that I really cherish passed away this week as well, and that is Chuck Mangione. I played Chuck's song Children of Sanchez Overture on episode 125 when we were talking about music with brass, and Chuck was an awesome horn player. Although Children of Sanchez is my favorite and is in my spiritual mixes, Mangione was most well known for his song Feels So Good, and this was from 1977. So I did want to play a little bit of that song here. Very jazzy and, again, very uplifting. Really love listening to this one. So back to the email about Ozzy and Black Sabbath. I had mentioned a few weeks ago that I was able to watch the live stream of the Back to the Beginning concert in Birmingham, England, and this was on July 5th. This was Ozzy's last performance. I did not expect him to go just a few weeks after that concert. And as I'm recording this, today was Ozzy Osbourne's funeral procession in Birmingham. Seeing Sharon and his kids there today was just very touching. I've seen some photos and some video, but was unable to watch the live stream. So today, one final send-off for Ozzy. So back to the Beginning concert. There was so much music that day, and it was just extremely historic. I'll name off some of the bands that played and then talk about some of the supergroups. But a band that I hadn't heard of before, Rival Sons, played early on in the day, and they just blew me away. Very rock-oriented. Most of the other bands were more of the metal genre, including Mastodon, Anthrax, Lamb of God, Alice in Chains, Hailstorm, Gojira, Pantera, Tool, Slayer, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and then finally Ozzy and Black Sabbath. And throughout the day, they had a number of supergroups where different musicians came up and performed. A lot of them were from the bands that were playing, and it was all brought together by Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. But yeah, I was surprised to see Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones, Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jakey Lee, one of Ozzy's old guitarists, and Rudy Sarzo, his old bassist, were there. I guess the star of a lot of the supergroups was Nuno Bettencourt from Extreme, just awesome guitar player. So many of the bands performed either Ozzy Osbourne songs or covers of Black Sabbath, and I will get to that here shortly. So I'd mentioned previously that Black Sabbath is well regarded as the godfathers of heavy metal, going back to their album in 1969. There's a documentary that I've referenced here on the podcast a number of times called Metal, A Headbanger's Journey, and I wanted to play a short clip about the influence of Black Sabbath.
Every metal band owes a debt musically to Black Sabbath. They were the original.
Indeed. First metal band ever, Black Sabbath.
Every cool riff has already been written by Black Sabbath. Anything anyone else does is just basically ripping it off. You're either playing it slightly different or backwards or faster or slow, but they did everything already.
For my money, Black Sabbath reigns as the first heavy metal band. It was here on the gritty streets of Birmingham, England in 1970, where Sabbath took music to a darker, more sinister place.
So awesome. And yes, those voices were Alex Webster from Cannibal Corpse, Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, and Rob Zombie from his band and White Zombie. And then finally Sam Dunn, who is the documentarian. So throughout the day, all the bands in the lineup got to play usually 3 songs. With the exception of Metallica, they got a bit longer of a set, but each band got to play a few of their own songs plus a cover. For this, I wanted to play a little of Tool's cover of Hand of Doom, and this was just a song that was meant for them. It sounded perfect. So here is Tool playing Hand of Doom. The song was from the 1970 Paranoid album. Awesome. Just love that. I'm so glad that I did a rip of the live stream audio for this before it disappeared from YouTube. Slayer has also done a great cover of this one. So I had a few Black Sabbath songs that I wanted to play here. The first couple talking about the influence that Black Sabbath had on the sound of heavy metal. And the first one is the song Black Sabbath from the band Black Sabbath on their album Black Sabbath. The song was written in 1969 and radically different from anything else that was around at the time. The album actually came out in 1970. Love that riff, and it's got the flatted fifth, Diabolus in Musica, the Devil's Tritone. Very interesting interval that has kind of an evil connotation. The beginning of this track has rain and a bell. The band Enigma used that as a sample. They've also sampled the harmonica from the song The Wizard. And I'll get into the album Paranoid in just a minute, from 1970, but in 1971, Master of Reality, that's my favorite album, and I wanted to play a clip from the song called Into the Void. Just listening to it today, 50 plus years later, it still sounds relevant to the metal community. Their influence is obvious. So here is Into the Void. Love that. I've heard quite a few covers of this, including Soundgarden and Caius. I believe Anthrax played it at the Back to the Beginning concert. Yeah, very influential sound. Most people know Black Sabbath from a lot of their music on the Paranoid album, which was 1970, including War Pigs, the song Paranoid, and Iron Man. And on the first half of that album, there was one song in there when I was in 4th grade and really got into Black Sabbath for the first time. I didn't really get why this was part of the album. It's a song called Planet Caravan, and it is just very beautiful, very mellow. I've played one of their other mellow songs called Solitude on the podcast before, as well as Changes. But Planet Caravan was one song that is just so different and very relaxing, and is part of my Lazy Days mixes. And I wanted to read out the lyrics for the song. I'll read both verses. I'm only going to play part of the song. We sail through endless skies, stars shine like eyes, the black night sighs, the moon in silver dreams pours down in beams, the light of the night, the earth, a purple blaze of sapphire haze, in orbit always. While down below the trees, bathed in cool breeze, silver starlight breaks dawn from night, and so we pass on by the crimson eye of great god Mars as we travel the universe. And very spacey, mellow, and relaxing. So here is Planet Caravan by Black Sabbath. absolutely love this song. And Pantera did a great cover of this. Recently, I've been listening to a lot of the other Ozzy Sabbath albums. On Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the song Spiral Architect has just kind of a real positive outlook. A lot of people think of Black Sabbath as doom and gloom, but they were really a hippie band with just heavy, heavy sounds. So, Spiral Architect lyrics, Sorcerer of Madness, selling me their time, child of God sitting in the sun, keeping peace of mind, fictional seduction on a black snow sky, sadness kills the Superman, even fathers cry. Of all the things I value most of all, I look inside myself and see my world and know that it is good. You know that I should. So here is Spiral Architect from the 1973 album Sabbath Bloody Sabbath.
Sorcerers of madness, selling me their time. Child of God, sitting in the sun, giving peace of mind. Fictional seduction on a black snow sky. Sadness kills the Superman, even fathers cry. Of all the things I value most of all, I look inside myself and see my world and know that it is good. To know that I should.
Love this one. There are a few other songs on that album that have been going through my head recently. But yeah, Ozzy parted ways with Black Sabbath in 1977, and that's when Ronnie James Dio took over as the singer of Sabbath. And Ozzy went on to his solo career, starting with Blizzard of Oz, and a song that I wanted to play off of Diary of a Madman. This one is called You Can't Kill Rock and Roll, and when I was making my God mixes, at first the lyrics for this song came up. I never put it in my spiritual mixes, but it is very relevant. And the chorus for that is, leave me alone, don't want your promises no more, 'cause rock and roll is my religion and my law. Won't ever change, may think it's strange, you can't kill rock and roll, it's here to stay. And the thought of rock and roll is my religion, when I first started talking about music as a higher power, that line stuck out to me. So this is Ozzy Osbourne, You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. Edited out for YouTube. Awesome song. Love this album. This is probably my favorite Ozzy Osbourne solo album. I did have the privilege of seeing Ozzy as a solo act and with Black Sabbath a number of times. One of his solo songs that I've always enjoyed but never really grasped onto was the song Mama, I'm Coming Home. And I'm going to have a hard time getting through this. When the opening guitar started playing at the Back to the Beginning concert, most of the audience, and myself included, just really started to lose it. I'm going to be playing a live clip from the Back to the Beginning concert, and this is footage from the audience. When it went out on live stream, the live stream was actually 2 hours delayed, and they did do some pitch correction for the live stream, but you can still hear the struggle in Ozzy's voice, and it's not so much the pitch, it's all about the emotion. Zach Wilde on guitar stepped up to the mic to really help Ozzy, and the rest of the crowd just joined in. So darn beautiful. This song has completely changed for me how I view it. Here is Ozzy singing Mama, I'm Coming Home from the Back to the Beginning concert.
And I don't know what to say, man. I've been laid up for like fucking 6 years. And it's so, you've got no idea how I feel. It's a song called Mama, I'm Coming Home. Times have changed and times are strange. Here I come, but I ain't the same. Mama, I'm coming home. Time go by, seems to me you could have been a better friend to me. Mama, I'm coming home. You took me in and you drove me out, yeah, you had me hypnotized. Yeah. Lost and found and turned around by the fire in your heart. You made me cry, you told me lies, but I can't stand to say goodbye. Mama, I'm coming home. I could be right, I could be wrong. It hurts so bad it beats all wrong. Mama, I'm coming home. Selfish love, yeah, we're both alone. Right before the fall, yeah. I'm gonna take it all the stuff. I just got to have it all. I've seen your face 100 times. Every day we've been apart. I don't care about the sunshine, yeah. 'Cause I'm coming home. I love you all.
Really enjoyed this performance. The live stream had cameras on the audience and you can see the emotion. So for the playlist, I'm going to be using the studio version of the song, but I really wanted to play the live version to convey just how it was. The evening ended with Black Sabbath, the original 4 members of Black Sabbath playing together for the first time in a long time. The last farewell concert that they did, and I think it was 2019, they had a different drummer. And so this was great to see the original 4 members up there on stage. Just what a celebration. Many of the times these types of tribute performances are after someone dies, and so it was really awesome to have Ozzy give his final farewell a few weeks before he passed away. So, a lot of emotion there. With that, I wanted to close out this episode with an audio clip from the TV show Resident Alien. I just got into this over the summer. I watched the first 3 seasons on Netflix, and I was super bummed that I was going to have to wait for the 4th season, and apparently it had already started airing. So I got caught up with that. When I got to episode 6, there was a great scene. I'm not going to really get into the background of this entire show, but Alan Tudyk basically plays an alien on Earth who's in human form, and some people know that he's an alien and other people just think he's a weird human. But in this episode, he's looking for a greater meaning and goes to a Native American powwow. And this powwow was just amazing, talking about the interconnectedness of everyone. And it really brought me to the idea of higher power and the connections that we find in our program. So I did want to play a clip from this. And it took me a while to actually get it from my TV, as I couldn't find an online clip of this. Anyway, here is a clip from Resident Alien, Season 4, Episode 6.
Are you reaching for the music? Is that what you're reaching for?
Your little one feels it, doesn't she?
She is less pissed, even happy.
That is the power of the jingle dress dance. Each step of these women's dance is a healing prayer.
Their prayers are in their shoes?
Oh, the sound of the jingles is like hundreds of tiny prayers. reminding us that we're all part of something bigger.
I think I'm feeling big feelings.
If you're thinking, you're not feeling. Now, come on. How do you feel?
I feel like you keep hitting me, but I also feel like I'm connected to everything. It's like Wi-Fi.
Nanima.
Your Wi-Fi network is named Nanima. My Wi-Fi network is named Nacho Wi-Fi.
Nanima means together. We are all connected to all things through the Creator. Just close your eyes and listen. Nanima is the great mystery that connects all things. It's how the river knows where to flow. It's how trees talk to one another underground, or how a rest dog magically appears every time you open a bag of chips. How do you feel?
I feel like I found something I need.
Then you are listening real good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the show. I'm bummed it didn't get renewed for a new season, but they might be doing a movie. As far as I know, there's still a couple more episodes to go, but really enjoying that one. So with that, I'm going to close out this episode. I just got an email today with some more music suggestions, and I'm going to save that for another episode because this one was a lot to put together. Like our emailer that you'll hear in the future, if you had any song suggestions from your recovery and you want to email that to us, you can do that at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. Or if you have any feedback on any particular episode, you can do that there as well. If you want to be a guest on the podcast or have any questions about the program, you can email me directly at jason@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. I thank you so much for tuning into this one. And as always, keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.